Hey, good afternoon. Welcome to the Old Geezer Show. My name's Chris, and we're off on one of my little jaunts through the reality of life for older people today. And what we're talking about today is the D word. We all know what it is. It's death, but we don't say it anymore. What we say is passing away or passed on or something like that. But the D word is actually dead and dying. It's not a hard word to say. It's not difficult to pronounce. And what it means is what it says. It's death. It's the end of your life. If you believe in a life after death, then that's fine with you. If you don't, then that's the end of it. But one of the problems we have with death, according to a lot of people, is the fact that people don't really understand it and find it a lot more frightening than it should be, because the reality is that death is just the end of life, as I said, and it's just the process that we all go through. I don't know what many people think death is about. I've seen 2 or 3 people die. And one of those was my wife, my first wife, and that's many years ago. And I remember it very clearly, and I remember her very clearly. But I don't think about when she died a great deal. I think about how she lived. There you go. So what we want to talk about today, however, is death and, I guess, life. And I think we ought to find someone who's an expert. And so yesterday, when I was looking at this thing, it came to me that there are experts about, because I found one. And the person I found was a lady called Dr Kathryn Mannix. And this is she. Dr Mannix is a retired doctor. She dealt almost exclusively for the latter part of her career with looking after people who were dying. That's a hell of a responsibility. It's a hell of a thought, isn't it? But Dr. Mannix has then gone on. She retired, and she's now gone on to talk about death and dying in a very straightforward and understandable way. And I think she is really a bit of a heroine as far as I'm concerned, because I don't know her. I've seen a couple of her videos, and how she explains death is infinitely worth watching if you don't know how it all works. Let me explain to you. That sounds a bit silly, doesn't it? When you look at someone who you love dying in hospital, in a hospice, and at home, what are you expecting? And I think people don't really know what to expect. I'm now going to just make one very vital point. If you're watching this and you've lost someone in a big accident, or an accident, or in some other way where they're younger, then I'm not referring this to you, because that's not necessarily the way that works. But when you have an older person and they are, as I said, laying in a hospital bed and a hospice bed at home, dying, then there's a very clear process. And I think that Dr. Mannix really explains that incredibly well. I'll put the links to her videos on both the BBC YouTube channel and the TED Talks YouTube channel. If you want to see either of those, there's also links in the description here on both YouTube and on Facebook. Have a look at those and see what you make of them. Do not kind of prejudge the situation, because you will learn. I think if you don't know a lot about how people die, you will learn an awful lot. And that's that story, as it were. So let's recommend this lady to you again. This is Dr. Kathryn Mannix. She is a retired doctor. She dealt with people who were dying for a greater part of her career, and she knows how it all works, which is something that most of us don't in this world today. I'm going to talk to you briefly as well about how these things work from an ordinary person's point of view, because when I was 32, I think, I lost my first wife, who was then 29. She died. She died at her mum and dad's home, but I was there. And like a lot of these instances, and exactly as Dr. Mannix described it, although she was extremely, extremely ill, she had bowel cancer. Her last couple of 3 days were quite peaceful because she had drugs from her local surgery, which helped her to get through. They took most of the pain away. They did have some slightly strange effects insofar as she hallucinated a little bit, but that's not a big problem, is it? You can have a conversation around it. What are you doing? I'm reading a book. Where's the book? Oh, I've got it here. Oh, right, okay. I can't see it. You get that kind of thing, but you still have the person you love and care for laying there, sitting there, whatever. And at some point, when you know when they're dying, you see that they, as we know from actually being there, I guess in my case, they sleep more and more. They don't talk so much. They don't have any interest in food or drink. And gradually they start to kind of close down their lives, really. It's an amazing thing because the young woman I'm talking about had a really bad cancer and it was killing her. But once she got on the medication and once kind of her death came towards her, if you like, she didn't really have much bother about it. She wasn't bothered. She was fine. She read her books, her hallucinatory books. She had a conversation or two with me as we went through the days. And then one night she slipped really into unconsciousness. And this is a point at which it all kind of, the body kind of shuts down. And she kept breathing. At one point, just before she died, she started to make some funny noises in her throat. And fortunately, I knew that that was a normal thing. Most people apparently don't. They call it the death rattle. But what it is actually is just when you're laying on your back and you get some liquid in the bottom of your throat and your air has to push its way through it. So, you gargle your way through it. And they keep breathing. And sooner or later, I don't know how long it was, she stopped breathing. She took a breath in and a breath out, and there was no more. And that's how death happens. And I would love you, if you would, to go and have a look at Dr. Mannix's videos, which were, as I say, they're actually there in the comments on this video. Go and take a look at them, see what you think. Come back to me in the comments. I would love to know what you think about this, and I would love to get a conversation going about how the people that we love pass away or die. I like the word dying because it actually describes what happens. Passing away is kind of, I think it's a bit airy-fairy. It may not be to you. It might be quite a good way for you, but I'd rather say she died. And that's how I feel about it. But there you go. So what we're looking at is getting people a bit more informed and to understand a bit more about how we die. I'm 76, so I'm a candidate. And if I'm able to come back and tell you how it happens, I will. But I don't think that's part of the plot. But the reality is that we all have to do it. And in honesty, I think if we all understand it more, then you won't see some of the problems that you see people having after their loved ones have died. We hear people all the time saying, oh, it was a tragedy when someone who's 85 passes away or dies. But in reality, that was their time. They were due to die then, and they died then. They were ill, they had something wrong with them, or the body had just worn out and they lived a good life. And so it goes. It's not a tragedy, it's what happens. When a young person dies because of a road accident, because of something happening, or like Sandra, because she had a horrible illness, a horrible cancer, that's a tragedy because she should have gone on and we should have had a life together. But as it happened, we didn't. So there you go. What do you think? I would love, well, yeah. This man says it's a lottery. Not so much, I don't think, Tim. I think it's just the way it goes. It's what happens. No one's going to live forever. So when you die is a lottery, I guess. But for people who have lived pretty full and exciting life, interesting life, as I have, I don't think it's that bad a deal. And dying is just something that we all have to do, and we should really talk about it more and make it easier to understand, and for those who are left behind, make it easier to live with. Now, there you go. Now, that is, I guess you'd say that's a show that I didn't really want to do, but when I learnt about Dr Kathryn Mannix's own work, I thought it was a show that was worth bringing to you. There you have it. Okay, I'm Chris. This is the Old Geezer Show, and I'm just going to say thank you so much for watching if you have been. And if you have a comment to make, I would love to hear from you, and that's always the case. And all I can say to you after that is, I'll see you soon.